Welcome back to Fear Begins. Tonight's story is different. It's long, it's disturbing, and it's based on real events from people who have refused to talk, until now. Before we begin, I want to know, where are you watching from? Have you ever experienced something scary during Halloween night? If so, drop your story in the comments. And if this terrifies you, share it with a friend you'd never want to play a Halloween game with. Now dim the lights, put on your headphones, and remember, not all games are meant to be played. It started with a dare. My name is Derek, and every Halloween my friends and I used to pull off some kind of spooky tradition. Ghost hunts, overnight stays in graveyards, that kind of thing. We were in our final year of college, and this Halloween felt like the last one before the world got too serious, so naturally we had to make it count. My best friend Jake, who always had a thing for urban legends, brought up a story none of us had heard before. You guys ever hear about Ashcroft? He asked, grinning like he already knew we hadn't. Ashcroft, I said. What, like a band? No, Jake said. It was a town, about 2 hours north. Except, it's not on the map anymore. We were gathered at Mandy's place. Her parents were out of town, and her living room was filled with leftover decorations, half-eaten candy, and the remnants of a dozen cheap horror movies playing in the background. I remember the way the lights flickered when Jake said, "Not on the map." "What do you mean, not on the map?" Mandy asked, raising an eyebrow. Jake leaned forward, excitement twinkling behind his eyes. Back in the 70s, there was this tiny town, Ashcroft. Had maybe a few hundred people. Then, one Halloween, a bunch of kids went missing. 6 of them, all under 12. The town went nuts. Parents freaked. Local police couldn't handle it, and soon, the whole town kind of imploded. People left. The mayor disappeared. They say the town cursed itself. "That's a lot of drama," our friend Connor muttered, sipping a beer. Jake didn't even flinch. "They say the state tried to bury it, bulldozed some parts, let nature reclaim it, wiped it from official records. But the creepy part, there's still a road that leads to it. No signs, no lights, just an old, cracked highway." "Let me guess," Mandy said. "You want us to go there?" Jake smiled. Connor laughed. "You're serious?" "I found directions on a forum. Some guy said he visited it last year. Took pictures of rusted signs, old swing sets, houses half swallowed by trees. Said he heard voices when no one else was there. Said he left in the middle of the night after he saw something moving in the cornfields." "Cornfields?" I asked. "What is this, children of the corn?" Jake shrugged. "All I'm saying is, if we're going out with a bang, this is it. One last horror adventure. Then adulthood." Of course we agreed. We always did. The man in the photograph. He hadn't aged. His clothes, his face, even the faint scar above his eyebrow. It was exactly like the man she had spoken to near the gas station that morning. Amanda's hands trembled as she held the dusty frame. Below the image, a name was scribbled in faded ink. Deputy Silas Granger, 1952. Her breath caught in her throat. How was that possible? The realization dropped like ice into her chest. The man she had seen was a ghost, or worse. Someone, or something, repeating an echo from a cursed past. Amanda bolted out of the office and back into the hallway. The walls felt tighter now, the silence more pronounced. As she reached for the front door, ready to abandon everything and run back to her car, she heard it, a laugh, not a child's laugh, not joyful or innocent, This was distorted, like an adult mocking a child's cry. She spun around, heart pounding. The laugh echoed again from the stairs. She hadn't even noticed them before. They led downward, narrow, shadowed, and utterly uninviting. A faint glow flickered below. Candlelight, against every instinct screaming inside her, Amanda descended. The firm basement felt ancient. It wasn't the typical concrete-walled water heater in the corner kind of place. The walls were brick, darkened with soot and time. Symbols, crude, pagan-looking markings, were painted across every surface, some smeared, others fresh. At the far end of the basement stood a mirror. It was tall, wrapped in a black cloth that had partially fallen away. She stepped closer and noticed something chilling. The reflection wasn't right. The room behind her, in the mirror, was brighter. There were people, dozens, standing still, wearing old-fashioned clothes, women in long dresses, men in suspenders and wide-brimmed hats. Their faces were blank, eyes dark as if hollowed out. Amanda turned around, no one there. But in the mirror they watched her. Suddenly, one of them moved. A tall man in a preacher's suit stepped forward and pointed at her. His lips moved. She couldn't hear the words, but somehow she understood. The offering returns. Amanda stumbled back. Her foot caught on a loose stone, and she crashed into the brick wall. The candlelight flickered violently, casting chaotic shadows. She scrambled up, ready to flee, when something behind the mirror whispered her name. Amanda. She bolted up the stairs, taking them two at a time. Back outside, night had fully fallen. Her car, gone. The road, gone. In its place was a trail of lanterns, floating just above the ground, winding back toward the heart of town. Every building that had been abandoned before now glowed with life. But not the comforting kind. From behind cracked windows, figures stared out at her, pale, unmoving, heads slightly tilted as if curious or hungry. A bell tolled in the distance, the same sound from the radio at the gas station. She turned and saw the church's steeple swaying in the breeze. It leaned now, crooked, as if bowing toward her arrival, and she realized something horrifying. The town wanted her back. She had returned not by accident, but by design. Josh had reported Emily missing by dawn. The police were polite, but unconvinced. Anything unusual had occurred. Teenagers run away all the time, the officer had said. She'll come back. But Josh knew better. Emily didn't run away. She had been taken. He avoided his house and returned to the woods every night. He brought flashlights, chalk, even a recorder to capture the whispers. Every night he saw flashes of movement, shapes just out of the beam's reach, and heard footsteps following him through the underbrush. Once, a bloody handprint appeared on the inside of his windshield while he was driving home. He knew then this thing had followed him back. Then came the dreams. In them, he stood in Brackridge Square, but it was different, older. The street lamps flickered with gaslight instead of LEDs. The storefronts were from another era, windows dusty, mannequins in Victorian garb. And always he saw Emily at the end of the cobbled road, motionless, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind her the figures loomed, the townspeople with no eyes, no mouths, wearing the same tattered clothing from the turn of the century. They weren't people anymore. They were something else. He began researching Brackridge's history. What he found chilled him. In 1891, the town had a different name, Halverton. It was a mining town, bustling and prosperous. But a shaft collapsed one October night, trapping 37 miners beneath the surface. The rescue effort failed, and the town held a mass funeral. But weeks later, the dead began to appear again, seen walking the streets, knocking on doors. People went missing, the air grew foul, and eventually the town was condemned. A new development was built over it years later. Brackridge had been built on the bones of Halverton. Josh found the blueprints. The storm drain behind his house. It ran directly above the old mine. That's why the whispers were louder there. That's why they came. That night, he returned again, this time with rope, salt, and a flare gun. He found the grate loose. The tunnel smelled of decay. He descended. The air was thick and wrong, like breathing in centuries of rot. The tunnel led to an open cavern, a forgotten part of the mine. Symbols were scratched into the walls in blood and soot. Bones lay scattered, some chewed, others freshly broken. And in the center, chained to a wooden pillar, was Emily. She was alive. Barely. Her eyes were wide with terror, lips trembling. "Don't say a word," she whispered. Then the voices started. Low murmurs at first, rising into a cacophony of angry whispers. Shapes moved beyond the torchlight, figures draped in shadow, faces stitched shut, dragging chains behind them. Josh lifted the flare gun and fired. The mine lit up in red fire. The creatures screamed and retreated like smoke. Josh broke Emily's chains and pulled her to her feet. They ran, dodging shadows and collapsing beams. The tunnel roared behind them with unnatural rage. They barely made it out. That morning, the mine caved in, forever sealed. Josh and Emily never spoke of it again. They moved, left Brackridge behind, but sometimes, when Josh dreams, he's back there, standing in Brackridge Square, and Emily is still at the end of the road, screaming, and behind her the town watches. The town always watches. Days passed, or at least they thought days passed. There was no sunrise, no birds, no clocks that worked. Just a growing sense of rot, decay, and something moving under the skin of Brackridge. Every night at midnight the knock came. Sometimes at the door, sometimes at the window, always followed by a whisper, "Put on the mask." They barricaded the room, but still they dreamed. Tasha was the first to break. She started sleepwalking, her eyes open but empty, whispering things like, "We're already gone and they're not wearing the masks. They are the masks." One morning, she was gone. No note, no signs of a struggle, just her necklace, twisted into a noose and hung on the door handle. That night, Chloe started screaming in her sleep. Josh tried to wake her, but she fought like an animal. When she finally opened her eyes, she whispered, "They're in my skin, Josh. They're inside." He didn't sleep after that. In the motel mirror, their reflections began to lag, staring at them a moment too long after they turned away. Then Chloe vanished too. Josh ran through Brackridge screaming her name, but it was as if she had been swallowed whole. Her phone sat on the porch of the diner, screen flickering with a selfie that had never been taken. Chloe, wearing the mask, smiling. That night, Josh made a decision. He was going to burn it all. He doused the motel in gasoline, starting with room 7. As he stood in the center of the room, he saw the mirror and himself. But his reflection didn't move. It grinned, wide and awful, and slipped on the mask. He screamed and struck the match. The motel went up like paper, Josh ran, out into the woods, into the dark, but the trees had moved. The roads were gone. Brack Ridge had no edges. It was a circle, an endless, hungry circle. He collapsed, breathing hard, crying. And then he heard footsteps, not from one direction, from all directions. Figures emerged from the mist, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all wearing the porcelain mask, all holding out one for him. He backed up, trembling, but there was nowhere left to run. "Put it on," they whispered. "Then you'll understand." And as they closed in, Josh screamed, but in Brack Ridge, screams didn't echo, they were swallowed. If you've made it this far, you're brave, but tell me, would you have stayed in the Hollow Rest Motel? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and whether you've ever experienced a town that just didn't feel right. And if you've ever had a Halloween night that turned unexpectedly dark, share it. You never know who else has lived through something similar. Don't forget to like this video, share it with a friend who loves a good scare, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of our daily Halloween horror stories. We've got even more terrifying tales lined up every night this spooky season. Sleep tight, if you can.